I would like to thank Andreas for the great job in the two panels in moderate. As we said from the start, here we're trying to bring all together on board. Don't forget we are from the same side. We are not from one side the other. You know, as Katalin said, we need to be working in an equal basis between regulators, industry, and so on. And being a media guy and having heard many times the word communication, then apparently it's something we have to work all together in order to communicate the message better. And what is important is to have this is with one voice. That probably this is what is missing. This is what we start doing over the last 3 months together with Glyn and Mehmet. I would like to apologize on behalf of Fabio and Simon. They were victims of our industry. Then they didn't manage to get here on time due of connection issues. Therefore, they send both two videos that I will present at the end in order to have their side in the topic. When we start building the concept of this event, it's not a commercial event. It's an event we try to find a way to move forward, to see the future of air transportation. As we start from the industry, then we have the regulators, and then we have the international organizations. The thing is, together with my good friends here, we're trying to see what are the main topics, main issues for our industry. We heard already from your side and your contribution. Then we need to see from the international perspective what are the main challenges for air transport. And this is my first question to ask you: where do you see the major challenge in our aviation is facing?
You mean one day focus?
Okay, well, make it shorter.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Kostas, for inviting air cargo to participate in today. We're not always the most highly thought of part of the industry, but later on, hopefully, we'll get to some statistics which will indicate how valuable we are to both the aviation sector and the global economy. I'd like to just kind of talk about TIACA, TIACA's role, first of all, before I come into that. TIACA is an international trade association, but it's slightly different from some of the traditional ones in the sense that we are horizontal. We represent every member of the supply chain that works in air cargo, from airlines, airports, equipment manufacturers, freight forwarders, shippers, technology providers, ULD, equipment manufacturers, etc. Everybody that's involved in air cargo is a member of TIACA. So we've already had to go through this discussion, which is how do we effectively serve all sectors of a community, which during their day job are sometimes fighting each other, sometimes they're competitors, sometimes they're working closely together. But there's one factor, and it's already come up, and it was a wonderful discussion just before on, I'm sorry, I didn't follow all the numbers. I was thinking, there's too many zeros there, but you've said it in such conviction, I trust your numbers. But what that illustrated is that we as an industry need to focus on what unites us rather than focus on what divides us. And to the outside world, every time we go public and say, well, he's put his rates up, he's failed in his service, he's not got the people that I need, etc., etc., his planes are old, then people on the outside say, great, that's what they love because now they can attack us, comfortably knowing that we're attacking ourselves. So for me, the success of this industry, which is probably the world's most regulated, it's certainly one of the world's most complex, it's certainly one of the world's most influential and most important industries, but what's critical is that we harmonize and align around what really unites everybody in this room and every room that's related to this industry, which is we want to move people and things safely and securely from one place to another. That's in a nutshell what we want to do.
When we look at globally, we have serious issues in the aviation. What are those issues? I don't want to repeat, but very fast. First of all, the high inflation and reciprocating that household income is not increasing, so less money is coming to the houses. This is the case almost everywhere in the world. The second issue, supply chain disruptions. Just an example for you. This month we're supposed to receive 4 aircraft. Today we received the first one, and today is the 8th of December. we don't know the dates when we're going to receive the other three. This is serious for everyone. Last week in the IATA board, I was talking to one of our members, and I asked him, and we were talking in the loop. I asked him, how about your deliveries? He said that we are getting on time. But our new on time is 6 months delayed.
It's on time.
But aviation industry is selling the tickets a year in advance. This is supply chain issue. SAF is a big issue. Environment taxes is a big issue. Do you know the impact of the Corsia LTAC? Instead of 100% to go to 85 up to 2019, it's $14 billion. Normally the LTAX effect is 14 billion. Lowering it to 85% of 2019 is bringing additional tax to us, which is 28 billion in total. Independent countries' taxation on the environment purposes, like the France's 1% of SAF usage. Are there enough SAF and we are not using? Can the suppliers provide us enough SAF? No, but we're going to pay the fine. It's going to be reflected to us. So, countries are having their own internal problems. Like in my country, we are having a huge inflation and other issues that we have to tackle. When we go back to the political side, the global issue nowadays is the Russian invading the Ukraine. And I was listening to Mr. Putin yesterday, and he was saying that this is going to continue, and we are more close to a nuclear war. Do you know the insurance clauses when there is a nuclear war? A single bomb was exploded. Do you know the clause? All aviation in the globe stops. Cease. Do you know the effect of this to the world? No. So, there are serious issues. How we are going to overcome? That's the most important part of it. So, I would like to give the analogy of the doctor. When you go to doctor, in order to have a diagnosis for your illness, will you say the working parts or no problematic parts of your body? Of course not. You will say where is aching, or when the doctor looks at blood level, he will say that you have high cholesterol, less blah blah. So what we are talking, as far as the time I was here, communication, getting together, learning more from ours, horizontally and vertically. It means that we have problems in that context. If we are talking always about communication, open dialogue, it means that we have problem in that area. When we have in the aviation industry is a dynamic industry and it's an ecosystem. Without airlines, airport is nothing. Without airports, ground handlers, service providers are nothing. We have to work together in order to build the value. What is going to be the triggering point is very crucial. If you kill the golden goose, then you will end up nothing. So, for this purpose, we have to understand the value of each other, respect for each other, and then start to build up the businesses. During the pandemic crisis, 80 airline companies in the globe bankrupted, 40 of them was re-established. So net we lost 40 airlines. One of them is in my country. And are there a replacement of that? No. Who's losing? At the end of the day, we are all serving for the customers. We are not, if we are not making them happy, what's going to happen? They will punish us. And they have lots of means to punish us. It doesn't mean that they're going to stop flying with us. But they will punish us so bad that we will regret to make them fly with us. So, this is just an introductory.
No, no. Well, sometimes you need to panic the people in order to get it seriously. You know, here we discussed and we said if something happened why you have COVID? Well, it was a complete panic. You know, if someone say didn't panic, sorry, everyone was panicked. Then we said for the first time we were together. Then we need a shock.
But it means that we were not together.
Yes, exactly. But the
Which
question
was the wrong? I'm criticizing that bit.
well,
So I have a surprise for you at the end of the...
a positive one or a negative one?
It's a positive one.
No, but you know, we said about COVID and that we start working together more actively. We didn't done it. Is now really the time? Is now the opportunity to finally put our difference apart? Okay, always there will be differences for sure. But
Yeah.
are we now more mature, or you know?
Well, I think, as somebody said earlier, it's better late than never. I mean, what's happened in the past is in the past. You know, whether or not, and you could say COVID was a blessing in one respect. Obviously, there was too many negative things to really call it a blessing. But from the aspect of did it bring the industry together, did it allow people to actually step up? And you know, we talked about IATA. IATA did some tremendous stuff in record quick time during COVID when they approved cargo in cabin. You know, this was something that, go back 3 years and said, could you imagine the situation where we would have these beautiful 787s, A350s, take away the seats, throw them away, put them on the side, put a cover over them, and stick cardboard boxes so they could look out of these beautiful big windows. And they said, that's crazy. So the IATA had to step up and actually in record quick time do the safety approvals for that. The airline CEOs to use their beautiful new assets to put cargo on it was also a step up. The ground handlers, you know, actually saying to the ground handling crews, right, instead of using high loaders and all these, we're now going to bring you 4,000 boxes of face masks and PPE. We need you to walk up the stairs, walk in the aircraft in some cases, stick them under the seats, stick them in the overhead compartments, stick them in the cupboards, secure them, and do that with human chains. These are innovations born out of necessity, but it also shows that this industry during a crisis unites for the common good. You know, and it's also one of the other aspects, and I always think we should pay respect to the people in this industry in the early days of the pandemic when nobody knew what we were dealing with. We had pilots, we had ground staff, we had airport operators, we had people who were turning up for the job day in, day out, touching things, moving things, basically, in some cases, sadly being exposed when they were flying to parts of the world where infections were rife. Some of them died, whilst many of us were at home shuttered, protecting ourselves. This industry was heroes. So it wasn't just coming together to show that we can work together, it was coming together and putting their lives on the line. So I think we actually almost owe it to those individuals that did that for the common good, to now not lose sight of that, and we must work together, because this isn't the only crisis that this industry is going to have. It's not done, tick a box, we move on to something else. No, it's the latest crisis. There will be another one. We don't know what that will be, but we have to prepare. So we have to unite around all these potential issues, and I think, as Mehmet said, is that we need to kind of now, whether or not it's a shock or an awe or whatever, but it's not just 5 or 6 associations, it's the regional guys. The regional guys are right finger on the pulse of what works in that region. So global associations alone can't do this. National associations alone, regional associations alone can't do this. Everybody together, and as you said, it's an ecosystem, it's a community. I'd say it's even more than that, it's a family. And families sometimes argue, the families mostly at the end of the night. Yeah, my ex-wife would disagree, but mostly, if you can go to bed and have a hug before you go to bed, that's fine. But we do need to come together, and we need to identify what it is that we can collectively bring to that particular scenario.
We have to come together yesterday, but it's never late. Again, I will go back to the doctor analogy. When we go to the doctor, what we ask from the doctor if we have an illness? To say the bad. When we are working together, it doesn't mean that we're going to agree on everything. Sometimes agreeing on disagreements are very crucial. What is critical to highlight? We have to ask ourselves one question. Do we want to create conflicts from our differences or synergy. This is the time to create the synergy bit. We spoke this about roads also. This is the time to have the synergy. Of course, if there's something wrong, we must say this on behalf of for the sake of our members and the industry. But it doesn't, or it must not prevent us to come to one table and talk the general issues of the industry. We have to separate these both. This is something we are not doing, and we have to do it. And we have to come around to be able to talk. And we might be able to disagree on the subjects at that agenda, at that time frame. But at least we have the privilege to come together like a family. Aren't you fighting with your siblings? Aren't you fighting with your wives? Aren't you fighting with your mom and dad? But I ask the question, if something is urgent, will you put your life in front of your kids? Always yes. But you are fighting with them. How come this can happen? What a contradicting view. What a oxymoron behavior. So, if we want to be successful in the future, which 2023 will going to be more recession year on the globe due to certain reasons, we have to come together. Of course, if we have to say the bitter, we have to say that. But in a polite manner, without throwing the table downwards and breaking and not to come back. That's called divorce in family analogy.
Yeah, there's no this option of it, in our case, you know, because I always say there's an aviation chain. If it breaks the chain, nothing will work.
Everybody loses.
Everyone.
Everybody loses.
How realistic will it be to speak as one voice?
Well,
Are you optimistic? Let's say this way.
that's a great question. For me, I think it comes back to what we were saying before. If we identify the issues that unite us and that are common, then absolutely we can speak with one voice. You know, just in the previous panel, we had a discussion talking about sustainability, decarbonisation. It's about presenting what we're doing as an industry, presenting that we are responding to global concerns, global issues, etc. This issue of labelling in the air cargo sector, we've had this for a number of years. A number of retail chains said, oh, we were going to use, they call it green miles or green labelling, and they were going to focus on buy local. And we were very successful. I was with IATA for 30 years, and we were very successful on that campaign by raising the voice of the small farmer in South Africa who had no voice. And we said, would you like to tell his kids they can no longer go to school? They can no longer put food on their table because you no longer want to buy the green beans that they've grown, fresh, naturally under, as it were, sunlight, etc., that they've transported, whether or not it's by ocean or by air, that they've transported so you can have these fresh green beans. You want to replace those with grown under greenhouses, with pesticides, artificial heating, etc., but it's closer to point of consumption. So we have to identify those issues, then use the might of everybody's intellect and perspective to come up with the arguments and the rationale which will help educate the uneducated. Because that's what we're dealing with here, is it's educating the uneducated. And I don't want to blame governments, etc., because they've got far, far bigger issues that they've got to deal with. So we can't expect them to have all the facts in hand with regards to every issue. That's our responsibility. And if they don't know, we failed. And if other modes, I think it was Thomas that was talking about the other sectors of transport that went in using their information about us to actually get what they wanted, well, we've been too passive. You know, this industry creates trillions of dollars of economic value every year, not just the society value that we bring for those developing nations, but if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17, you know, I just focused on the air cargo side, we support 14 of them. So that in itself is something that we need to portray over. Air cargo transports 35% of international trade by value, only 1% by volume. You know, so when the kids, you know, next generation, they want their smartphones, do they realize that those things didn't happen to get manufactured in Best Buy and that they just come from the back to the front? That smartphone has already crossed the border 200 times in the different raw materials and components. And if it was manufactured in Switzerland, it would cost about $20,000 to buy that smartphone. You know, the fact that they can actually use international supply chains and the economies and the efficiencies that facilitate the trade, then they can actually get the phones, the technology, the products that they want, the time that they want. So we need to make people who are not aware of what things, you know, they just see things, but they don't understand necessarily what goes behind what they actually get. We have a role to play of focusing on the friends, the family, the travel, the transport, tourism. Sorry, here's a pro-cargo bit, and I apologize for all the people involved in the passenger transport. But in 2019, these are IATA numbers, the value of inbound tourism spend was $850 billion. So for the 195 states, $850 billion was the value of inbound tourism by air. The same year, 2019, the value of exports by air cargo on those same aircraft and the freighters was $6.4 trillion. So the air cargo value was 8 times more valuable to international economic prosperity. Yet we did the worst job in air cargo because nobody knew that. I presented that on one of the CART sessions for ICAO, and I had about 60 ministers of transport on the screen with little heads, and all the heads turned sideways when I said this. It's like when you were giving all your zeros for the emissions. What did he just say? That the air cargo was 8 times more valuable for my country, and in 2021 it was 20 times more valuable. It was 7 trillion versus 350 billion. So, you know, that shows even where we have the numbers and the information, if we don't share it, how can we say to people, why are you investing in air cargo? Because you didn't tell me how important air cargo was. So we have to actually take that voice out. And as I say, it's everybody in this room and everybody in this industry united, that voice is very loud.
Before I ask the next question, is there any comment or question you have from...
No, I have one comment.
As many more.
I didn't finish it. No, we have to talk the bitter. There's a big hypocrisy in everybody, especially in the western part of the globe. If you want to use the latest technology products, if you want to have everything, but if you also want to be greenest, this is hypocrisy. This is not the case. Sorry. So, we have to understand, we have to talk with the facts and the realities. When we look at the European Union, when they are talking about the environment, look at that they are calling developed countries. They finished their development. They colonized the globe more than 600 years, took everything they need. Now they are saying that, okay, we want to clean our hands. When we go to China, India, Bangladesh, Africa, they brought them to that level with their natural resources and the human capital. Now, when the time comes for them to not even par themselves in the life expectancy, but to come somehow nearer compared to existing position, we are saying them no. So I saw an article, it was about in the last 25 years, if we continue spending like this in the coming 25 years, we need 1.75 world resources. Who's consuming? We are consuming. We are continuing to consume, but on the other hand, we are also saying that we want a green world. And then this is an oxymoron condition. So we have to be really talking with the facts and the realities. So if you want a car, if you want a decent life, if you want to have a vacation, if you want to have some savings in the bank, if you want to have a house, if you want to have a summer house, if you want to have a second car, if you want to have a, if it is possible, a yacht or a boat, you can talk about, I want also green. These are contradicting. And because of the Greta issue is a big theater. Yeah. And I don't know who was behind that, but that affected millions of people, billions of people in a negative way. and someone triggered the right point. It was like the domino. So they dropped the first domino and it came as an effect, the WIMP effect. Like that. So we have to be really talking about these issues with facts and with seriousness. So everybody wants to be green. Of course I want to be green. I want to go to the nature. I want to go to the beach without having any pollution, mountain without having any pollution. But what is the cost for that? Who's going to pay for that? Oh, I don't want to pay for that. Or I want to have the most comfortable environment for me, have a cellular phone, mobile, iPad, also desktop, also have a 65 or 55-inch television to watch the World Cup much better, all sorts of electronic items. What's happening to them when they are scrapped? Do you know? I was in electronic retailing business 10 years ago. They are sent either to India or Bangladesh in order to take the gold and copper outside of it. And do you know how they are doing it? They are using acid for that. Washing it up. All the chips have a millimeter something gold in it. So, as long as we continue, some of you are using iPhones, if I'm not wrong. I'm using Samsung, but it's the case. Have you ever used the new model more than 3 years? The battery is dying. Why? In order to motivate you or facilitate you for new consumption. Even if you use the battery effectively, then they are saying that we are not providing software for those models. So you can't do it. If you want to have an app download or renew the app, you need a new one. So they are forcing you. And those are the people, those are the manufacturers, those are the service providers who cries most. Another oxymoron situation. So I talk too much.
No. How often we need to communicate?
Whenever you need. It can be sometimes daily, sometimes every single minute, sometimes once a month. We must not frame ourselves when we are doing something. If it is needed, during the corona period, or if you have a crisis, you meet continuously. I know in 2016, we had a military attempt in Turkey. I did not able to sleep for 48 hours. We were 16 aircraft on the air, and they closed the airport. And we have they are not birds, and they have limited gasoline, and they have to land. So we have to manage that. Or next day, we were able to make 83 flights in a closed airport. The roads were closed with tanks, and the soldiers disappeared and throw away the keys, and it took 4 days for the military to find the keys or replacements and took the tanks in front of the entrance gate of the airport. So, it depends. If we need every day, every hour, if it is not for a regular purposes, once a month, in every quarter.
I don't think we should have a time frame. I think because then you get to the point of speaking for the sake of speaking. I think when there's a topic that needs to be spoken about, we should speak. There is one issue which I think is crucial though, which is the timeliness of it. It's no good if we come out now and say, oh, by the way, please keep airspace open for COVID to move the PPE around. I think we've missed the boat by 2.5 years. I think it's when an issue happens, it's the speed at which you can actually unite the organizations to have that common message. That's going to be a challenge. You know, and that's one thing I think that all of the associations that want to kind of sign up and subscribe and join forces have to commit to say that we would be rapid responding, as it were, to say, right, here's an issue, here is something we feel we need to come out with publicly so that our voice can be one of those first. I would say we hope to be the first responder. You know, if we can be the first responder, that's where we can actually set the narrative.
I have one last question because we have to make, the announcement, and this
despite the challenges and all the...
Simple, yes.
I
No
think,
discussion.
yeah, no discussion. I think the future is brighter now than it's ever been. I
Then,
really do. Despite all the challenges, it's only for us to screw it up. I think if we get it right, collectively, we're going to be around for well, until they invent Star Trek where they can beam us up. Until then, they're going to need aviation.
okay,
Today, the question you ask is like, can you survive without breathing? Can you?
well, before we move to the next steps, I will ask Mehmet to take the
So,
floor.